I think the shift that's happening for me as I approach 30 is not revolving my life around my career, but rather fitting my career into my life.
Oh, Purnell, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
With 30 Under 30, we like to celebrate people who are obviously young in life and usually young in their careers. But I think one thing that's different about you is I know you've been working from a very early age, very young age. So this is kind of old hat for you compared to some other people. What, I guess, like, was that initial spark or what got you into this racket at an early age?
I think, in all honesty, I didn't, I was a kid. I did baby modeling when I was like 2 years old and probably couldn't form thoughts. And I did an advert when I was 8 years old. I don't think I ever really knew what was going on. I didn't, I loved singing, I loved dancing, I was a musical theater brat, and I loved doing that. It wasn't, I didn't think of it as a career. I didn't think of it as like something that I could do the rest of my life. It was just something that I did for fun. I don't even think I really knew I was getting paid. Like I just didn't have, you're a child. It wasn't really until I was a teenager and I started to meet these incredible, actresses who were older than me, and they started to give me advice that I started to really think that I could do this long term. But it's been, like you say, it's been a long journey, and I've had to sort of reckon with it many, many times to get to where I am now. And it's also really cool being here and the kind of like, I've always wanted to do the Forbes as Under 30, I finally got here, and I get to sort of look back, and I feel really at peace and happy and proud, and like grateful to my mom and my agents and all the people that supported me when I was that young acting.
I know for a lot of people that transition from like being a child actor to an adult actor can be difficult. I guess, was there ever a moment where that flipped for you, or a mindset that had to change there?
Yeah, so many. It's really, really tough, like giving a child that much responsibility, and there's a lot of pressure, and you don't have the emotional intelligence or the tools to deal with it necessarily. Like there's no handbook on how to do that. And we just don't have the support in place for young people in that way. There's 1,000 times that I had to sort of question if I wanted to even be an actor and what kind of actor I wanted to be. What movies do I like making? Do I want to do movies or TV? Who do I want to be like? There's so many questions you ask yourself as a teenager to do with your identity anyway. You shouldn't really have to ask yourself about your career and your taxes when you're 15, but it's just kind of, it's just a different way of living, really. I've fallen in and out of love with my job 1,000 times. It wasn't really until my early 20s, actually, that I redefined my profession, decided to do it in my own terms, really thought about who I liked and what kind of career I wanted. And really that ties into like, who are you? And how do you want to present yourself to the world, but just on a slightly more intense scale?
Well, I mean, I was wondering, as I've heard you mention this before, but how close were you actually to not moving forward? I mean, like, it seems like there was a moment there where you thought about going to university and like kind of taking up something else, but like, how close was it? I mean, it seems now, obviously, with the success you've had, a crazy thing to think about, but.
I mean, I'm still there. I'm still like every other day, like, maybe I want to be a florist. I don't know. I'm not convinced that we're always just supposed to sort of just do one thing in life. I wanted to go to university. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a teacher. And I did do all of those things. When I was a teenager, when I wasn't acting, I worked in a pub, I worked in a coffee shop, I worked in a restaurant, I worked as a babysitter and a tutor, and did kind of try all of these different things. At one point I was like, I'm going to be a tap dancer. I do get to, and that's the thing I love about acting, is you kind of do get to play in those fields. I can shadow people in professions that I never would have dreamt of doing. I can sort of research and throw myself into different time periods and genres and sort of skills and hobbies and things that you would never really get the chance to pursue, and definitely not pursue in the name of work. But I love what I do. I'm not convinced I'm only going to do that forever. I love directing and writing and producing and trying all of these different things. I'd love to teach one day. Still want to be a florist. So yeah, definitely changed my mind a million different times. But I love acting. I can't think of my life without it.
So you mentioned this moment at age 20 where you're setting kind of like a new path. I guess what was the resolution there? Or how did that send you off into what you're doing now?
I think it was just sort of about growing up, we're trying on all of these different versions of ourselves, right? Like I remember being like a lanky 15-year-old, and you're so insecure, and you don't know who you are, you know what you want to do. And I think that people tend to want to sort of put you in boxes as a young woman, as a young person, as an actor especially. They like to compare you to other people or think, oh, she's an English Rose, oh, she's this and she's that. And I never felt like any of those things. I feel like I'm a bit too rough to be an English Rose. I feel like I'm not quite cool enough to be like grungy. I never really knew where I fit, and I was always trying to mold myself and model myself after other people and be what the character or the casting director or the director wanted me to be. And in my early 20s, I did a show called Sweet Bitter, and I moved to New York, and it was my first time doing TV, it was my first time working in America, doing an American accent, living in New York by myself at 20 years old. It was like insane. And I really got to just like live and be on my own, be completely independent. And I just sort of like became a person. I was reading and cooking and living by myself for the first time and discovering hobbies. And that's when I felt like I finally understood who I was, is when I felt like I didn't have to try to be an English Rose or be these people, and I could just go after the movies that I wanted to do or the TV shows that I wanted to do. Actually, like, what do I like? I like comedy. I like dark stuff. I like gore. I like psychological thrillers, and I can try all of those different things. I think it's just growing up really and gaining that independence helped me.
I mean, it seems like since you have started to have success that you've been working a lot, like you're popping up on multiple shows a year and that kind of thing. And I was wondering if there's been any like pressure that, now you've had success and you're getting opportunities to, do as much as I can or level up and continue to like progress. Or what are you thinking as far as a career, now that you've been in it for, 10 plus years?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think about that a lot. We have this sort of scarcity mindset as not just actors, anyone who is sort of a freelancer or works in a creative industry where you don't have a regular 9 to 5, where you have to create your own opportunities, you have to go after your own work. There is this thing of work, because you never know when your next job's going to come. What if I don't get another job? What if blah, blah, blah? And it's terrifying, but I do think that's really unhealthy. And I've definitely been guilty of that. I love my job, I love what I do, but it's addictive. That adrenaline, like it's so addictive. That cycle of rejection as well, wanting a part, losing the part, wanting another part. It's a gambling thing almost. And I do think over the last couple of years, I've been moving very fast, and I've had to sort of learn that being selective is actually, operating from this place of abundance, of like what will be, surrender. I sound so woo-woo, but it's true. I actually think then it's healthier. You're in a better place. Like you have to take care of yourself first and foremost. I no longer, but I definitely have, but I no longer feel the pressure to, like you say, work, and actually only pick the things that you are completely in love with and you really feel is the right move for you. Don't just take whatever you can get, because you'll get burnt out eventually, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you stay sane. I mean, I guess like that's the question, but with the projects they're working on now, with Sweet Pea, with Fallout, like you're the lead of the show. You're kind of the star of the show in a different sort of way than in a lot of the shows that came before it. Does that change your mindset as well? Like how you think about the final product, or you having a little bit more, I guess, ownership over it? Or not ownership, but your face is on it to a certain degree. Does that change your mindset with these projects?
I think it feels like pressure for sure. But I think you have to just really not actually actively work very hard to not think about that and treat it as if it's anything else. You should be putting 100% into every project, regardless of the size of your role or the significance of, the paycheck or whatever it is. You should be just doing your best all the time, I suppose. And yeah, when I found out I got Fallout, I was absolutely terrified. There's a big fan base behind the game. It's an Amazon show. It's definitely like my biggest project to date. It was terrifying. But I suppose one of the benefits of having grown up in this and having been doing it for a long time, I understand this is a marathon and not a sprint, and just put one foot in front of the other, stay off the internet, and do your best, and that's what you can do, I suppose.
Is it a different feeling now? Because I know you're filming season 2 of that, and Sweet Pea has a season 2 as well. Is it different, like going back to a show, like kind of now you maybe know the people you're working with or the character a little bit more? Like, is that a different feeling as well?
Yeah, it is totally. Well, in some ways there's less pressure because you've at least established the character, and you have less, choices. But in other ways, more pressure because now people are actually going to watch it and they're waiting to see it, and you know that you can't make a mistake and you can't mess up, and also all of that stuff. Ignore all of that stuff just within myself. How can I continue to evolve and grow? And that's a challenge in TV, right? I love doing different things all the time. I don't want to box myself into just one genre, just one character. When you're signed onto a show for however many years, you're playing the same character. How do I continue to evolve as an actor, as a person, and grow and change while still being this character that people know and love, hopefully just at least don't hate. Or sometimes they can hate them, and that's fine too. That's something that I'm sort of figuring out is how to sort of fine tune that. It's a balancing act, I think.
Okay. And then I saw online a short that you directed. Is there like ambitions there to move behind the camera or be in more like sort of creator roles with projects in the future?
Yeah, totally. I produced a couple things, and that was my first short that the first short that I've directed that I've allowed the world to see, because there's a lot of bad ones that I hope will never come to light. And I love it. I think it's a different kind of muscle. I really enjoy being on the other side of camera and using a slightly more sort of analytical side of my brain, especially with producer. I produced Sweet Pea. And it was such an incredibly validating experience because you realize in that moment, you have all the self-doubt. And if I can do this, or if I'm good enough, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm just an actress. And then you get there and you're like, oh wait, the last 12 years of growing up on set, it's like you absorb it through osmosis. I surprised myself with how much I had actually retained just being around it. And I actually did know a lot of stuff that I didn't think I knew. And then, you were in this sort of like very tight-knit circle of amazing, creative, collaborative people. Being able to sit in this writer's room, like 5 or 6 people, and build each other up, like that energy, I've never experienced that before. It's, the only thing I can compare it to is making music. It's so contagious. It's so sort of like vibrant and present, and you can feel it, and you can feel when you're having a bad day, and you can feel when you're having a good day, and it's just like, it's so exciting. That is like real magic. I'd love to do more of that.
Yeah, the exciting thing for me sitting down with people who at this point have, accomplished something, but they're under 30 and they're still young and they still have like a whole career in front of them, is how you now use that success to kind of like chart out what your career might look like. For you, is that something you think about? Are there actors that you maybe look at and say, I love the route that they took through this? Or I guess like, we're Forbes, we care about the business side of things and money, but like, how much do you think about your career as far as big picture, like planning it out versus, oh, this project came up, I like it, I'm going to do it?
I think the shift that's happening for me as I approach 30 is not revolving my life around my career, but rather fitting my career into my life. And I think I've definitely been guilty of being such a workaholic, and I do love my job, but it has to be a balance. And I think of my life, I think about all the places I want to travel, all the places I want to live. I think about my family. I think about my hobbies, what I need to improve on, how I can grow. And if I can achieve all of those things through my job, I'm the luckiest person in the world. And it seems like with acting and directing and writing and all those aspirations, I can. I think what's going to help me grow and find joy in life is working with people I like, going to really cool places. I'm lucky enough to do that. And continuing to take roles that feel like a challenge to me, like they're different, like they mean something. Maybe, I'm helping young people, I'm helping women, I'm helping, a group of people in some way. And just sort of, I suppose, continuing to scare myself, continue to do things that scare me,
One thing I'm curious about, just, I'm 29, we're around the same age, like, do TV versus movies, does that matter for actors, these days? Or is it like a good project's a good project and, we don't think about what we like? Or, I'm a big movie fan. I know that that's maybe just me, and I feel like people around my age who I talk to, like my friends and stuff, they don't care about that as much. But on the creative side of things, do you think about that sort of thing?
I don't really anymore.
Yeah.
I used to. I remember when, pre-streamers, TV wasn't as exciting to me personally as movies were. For me, creatively, a good story, a good character is compelling enough for me to want to take the part. But there are some other things that factor into it. I love doing TV. I mean, I've done a lot of TV, considering it in a short amount of time. What I love about it is the chaos of it, really. You know, with films, you get a script, and the script will change for sure, but you generally know where you start and where you finish. TV, it's like, I could read a script next week that tell me to like dress up as a bird and run down a catwalk, and I'd have to do it. You don't have any real control, you'll say, a little bit, but not really. And you get to play this character, inhabit this character, and then just sort of jump and hope that the writers will guide you to where you need to go, even if you don't necessarily understand it. Trust in them that they have this end goal. And sometimes they don't even have an end goal, by the way, and they are making it up as they go, and that's fun as well. You know, that's where, for me, it's sort of almost got this like improvisational quality to it, sort of long-term improv, where you just sort of, you know, you might have a plan, and then it's like life. You might have a plan and then something else comes along and you just have to pivot. That's exciting to me. I think at this point right now, I'm now leaning back towards movies. I've had enough of the chaos and I'd like to go back to something slightly more controlled. Okay. But, you know, like I said, it's more about the character and the story for me than anything else.
Is there, I mean, not just TV or movies, but a type of character or a type of project or doing something that you haven't done before that is exciting to you?
What haven't I done? Comedy, I'd like to do more of that. I love watching comedies, and I've never really done like a big, dumb, broad sort of comedy, so I'd like to do that. Never done a musical. I just want to do things I haven't done before. That's like my whole appeal, is if I read a character that I feel is anything like one I've played before, I'm just not interested because it's not challenging to me. It's like, okay, well, you've got to do this for 6 weeks to 8 months, right, of playing the same person. I'd love for it to be something that challenges me, that feels like I really have to use my brain to get there. I don't know, a new character. I love putting on characters, so something that feels very different from myself.
The other thing that kind of big picture, maybe a little existential, but if we were doing an under 40 thing and talking to you again in 10 years, I guess what would you hope that that would be different from where you are now?
Oh, that's a good question. I love existential, by the way.
Great.
God, 12 years. I don't know. I guess I'd like to have more directing and writing and producing credits under my belt. Definitely want to focus more on writing. Maybe music. Just want to continue to branch out and do things. And I hope I'm a better cook by then as well, and a better driver.
And you keep mentioning florist. So
yeah, and also a better flower arranger. Yeah, maybe I could like tell them apart in 10 years. It'd be cool.
Okay, awesome. Hello, Purnell. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.